This is episode 44 of the Ownstream podcast, featuring Stephen and Theresa.
Welcome to the Ownstream podcast, everybody. Thanks for being with us. I'm Stephen Shelley.
I'm Theresa Scoba.
And this is the end of the year. This is our 44th episode.
Woo!
That's amazing. And we are sitting in sort of a small cottage out behind a friend of ours' place in San Diego recording this. And in case you're wondering kind of about our best of edition that'll be coming out next week, we didn't realize it'd take that much work to prepare. Well, not work, but time. We're really listening to a lot of episodes carefully and extracting parts that we want to feature. And so that does taking us a little longer than we had expected.
We're really enjoying it, though. We had decided that we had such great content this year and a real diversity of content that we wanted to do a best of episode. And we started talking about which are our favorite podcasts. And I kind of thought that I don't know what you thought, that we'd have like maybe 5 that were like our favorite podcasts. And then we're like, oh no, we got to include that one. And we got to include that. And we wanted to cover, a diverse set of the topic areas and stories. And actually, as we've been listening to them, so we ended up, of course, with a list of I don't know how many we're going to feature, 15 basically. And we've been listening to them again. And honestly, it's been so wonderful reliving those conversations because we really just had a number of dynamic conversations and along our own journey this year really picked up a few really nuggets of wisdom and experience from people that has, personally made this such a vital, rich, abundant experience of a year for us. So it's been great doing that. But yes, it's taken us longer, and it actually will be perfect releasing it next week because we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of Ownstream too. So it's sort of a calendar year best of, and also almost the 1-year anniversary. Yeah,
we really hope you've learned a lot and gleaned a lot from our guests this year. But we certainly have. So much of what we have learned from our guests have just been put right into our lives, and it's been the most accelerated year by far for us, no doubt about it. So with regards to this week, we were kind of inspired. We were coming back from Sedona. Was that a week, 10 days ago? After the last retreat with Bentinho Massaro. We'll talk about that a little bit too. But on our way back, we were listening to episode 1, which we recorded almost a year ago. I guess it was,
beginning of January. We released it the 19th, right?
Or the 12th.
Oh.
Yeah, so about a year ago. And we were struck by how the intentions that we had set out with were basically fulfilled or cleared, if you will. I like that word, cleared. We had these intentions in our field, our kind of couple field, the collective field of the two of us, and the big ones were completely absorbed, experienced, and now we have fully passed, I think, a number of these and are now looking at something pretty dynamic and vibrant for this year. We'll get into that a little bit too. So there were 3 main things that stood out to us from that first podcast last year that we wanted to delve into and talk a little bit about and clarify kind of how that was, and maybe kind of experientially talk about the power of intention and how these attentions were accomplished. And the first of that was the podcast and Ownstream as a business, because we really launched Ownstream the business with the show. And I think our launch date was January 26th, but we front-loaded 3 episodes. That would have been the 12th, the 19th, and the 26th, so that when new guests came, or when listeners came to our page, they could see a few things to choose from and experience. So the podcast, the business, at this point, I'm so proud of the podcast. Listening to the episodes that we've listened to, ranging from Pam Popper to Bridget Nielsen to Leo Babauta to Tynan to more. We have more to listen to as well. You'll hear from all 4 of those for sure next week. But I'm just blown away by the quality of the conversations, what the guests have experienced, what wisdom they're sharing. And I'm imagining people hearing this all over the world and being inspired and excited to follow their dreams, follow their excitement, and devote their lives to their calling. And so pride is a word that I think in this day and age kind of it's sort of a negative. There's a pejorative attached to it, but boy, I'm so proud listening to these podcast episodes and really honoring what we've done this year.
Well, I think the pride comes from, I think for me at least, it's in that sense of following your calling, and really feeling like we went for it.
Yeah.
And I know for me, as you guys know from listening to the podcast, or if this is your first one, a theme for me has been not following my calling in previous years, and kind of following more of an intellectual calling.
Follow your sadness.
Yeah, or like a should calling, sort of like at once something that was a calling for me that became not a calling for me, and yet sticking with it and thinking, I should do this because this is what I got my degree in, or this is a stable job, or blah, blah, blah. And so but ignoring the things that really excited me. And what's so cool is January was such a special month for us last year, because we already had the intention, and we'd developed the webpage, developed a logo, and planned out our first set of episodes. So we were launching the business when we were watching this Bentinho Massaro retreat that was happening in the Virgin Islands. And basically, it wasn't even the intention of the retreat wasn't to focus on your calling, but it ended up taking that direction for a variety of reasons. And we were just riveted to the screen because, for me in particular, I was still working in a field that no longer excited me. And it basically, they made a very strong call to action, define your calling and go for it. What's holding you back? And we're challenging all the people at the retreat to cut, at least to change the architecture around them to support following their calling. And was there anything that stood out that did not support you following your calling? And for me, certainly, that was my job. I spent so much time and energy on my job. I didn't get to spend time with Sophia and Stephen. I wasn't getting to really, I didn't have much energy or time to work on Ownstream around that. And so right after that retreat, I gave notice, and, the plan was to really fully dive into Ownstream. And that, so I think the pride is feeling like we're in the flow of our calling, and rehearing these conversations with guests who inspire us, and voices that we've been so proud to amplify because they are people following their calling, and really voicing the new paradigm of living a dynamic, abundant life that is resonant with your joy and bliss, which is there are a lot of different topics we've covered, but that's sort of the underlying theme of the conversations and what we want to put out there.
Yeah, thank God for Bentinho, because I'm not sure what direction that event was going to take, but I think it was the first day, and everything's come full circle, by the way. I'll talk about that in just a second, because when he was on stage at that point, a young man was on stage with him who's since become a good friend of ours. This wonderful young guy, Anthony Thompson. He'll probably be on our show next year sometime. But anyway, Bentinho, in full integrity with his calling, literally on the first day of this event, said, I can't do this right now this way.
Teach the way he'd been teaching.
And it wasn't the event that he was abandoning, but it was the original intention, which for him in that moment seemed to hit an expiration. And he kind of put his head together with the team, and the next 5 days were, as you described, riveting. And he brought up Anurag Gupta. Again, everything comes full circle. Mm-hmm. He's now, I think, episode 39 or 40, one of our recent guests. You definitely want to check that out if this topic of following your calling or your excitement is exciting, because he that's his thing. But the event kind of went in that direction, and Theresa and I the whole time were looking at each other like, I can't believe how spot on this is for us and for you in particular. The clarity with which Bentinho teaches, and with Anurag on stage with him, who's like a kind of a very different type personality, but the two of them together were just like two lightning bolts, just striking over and over and over again. Thank God for them, for being so clear and so resonant and so brave to step up the way they did, because anybody else would have just followed through and kind of plowed through with that event. And I'm sure it would have been a great event, but this was a life-changing event instead of a great event for us, and I know for hundreds of other people. So there's a clear example of someone following their calling in the minute and having it having something expressed through them that is meant to serve others in a very powerful way, and there's the evidence. The next thing that really stood out on that, did you want to say more about that?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. The next thing that really stood out, which I had forgotten we had this intention.
As early as January.
Last year was to take a long trip, probably through the West and Southwest, in a mobile living dwelling, and I think I even said like a Sprinter van or an Airstream. And Airstream has always been interesting to us. And so that we talked about that on the first episode, and boy, did that happen. I mean, that happened in such a big, glorious way. And it was something I think at that point maybe I was a little more interested in than you.
Yeah.
I think because it was before that event with Bentinho and Anurag, and so you were still very much in that mindset of working a job and needing to be at your computer every
Wi-Fi,
day.
what would I do?
All of that.
Like very chained down.
And then too, like I think we both grew a lot as parents in the early part of the year, and we really grew into the reality of being able to travel with Sophia, who by the way was like the most nimble and accepting of these environmental changes, way more than...
And still is.
Way more. So we look at the monitor with her passed out in her portable crib in some room she's never seen before at our friend's place, and completely comfortable and obviously very safe. And so, so that was an intention. And when we went to Sedona in February, this was the first of 4 trips to Sedona last year. We were walking around Thunder Mountain, I guess it was.
No, Cathedral Rock.
Cathedral Rock, excuse me. And I think it was like the information was in the ether around that vortex because it hit us both about the same time. But we both realized like we have to get into nature in a way that is big and bold and for an extended period of time. This can't be like a weekend camping trip or even a week-long camping trip. We need trees and air and mountains and fresh water and
quiet,
stillness.
Yeah, we've definitely talked about this on previous podcasts, but when we first left New York for California, we were really like detoxing from city life. It was like step 1 of exiting the matrix, which will be a theme for us in the coming year. It's started to be a theme for us this year, but which we'll talk more about in a minute. But then we got to Encinitas, and as we've said before, it was still too urban for us. And so we were like, why aren't we happy? We live 5 minutes from the beach, and we were happy, but there was this like real longing for nature, for more simplicity, for what I would identify as the stillness of God, that is for me easier access to nature. And I think for a lot of people, that's an entry point to the divine spirituality. So we both, we're out hiking, just a very simple hike in Sedona, but just disconnected from everything. We're like, this is it. We need more of this. And when we first moved out to California, had an intention of buying land and building a small house on a tiny house at the time. And it didn't work out that way for a few reasons about the timing and being pregnant and needing to land somewhere and not knowing where to get land, et cetera. But this has remained a theme. We took this beautiful trip in the van. And in January, I noticed on the podcast, our first podcast, it was not an intention to sell everything and move into a van. It was just like, I remember us talking like, oh, we'll take a few months trip. But as we began to approach that, we thought, no, we don't want to just come back here.
Yeah.
We really wanted to go open-ended. We wanted to simplify down to what we really most needed to live. And we wanted it to be open-ended, so we wouldn't just come back and, sort of more of a burn the boats moment, as we've talked about. So we wouldn't just come back and land in our condo. And you know what? I think we would have, because we've been a little bit nomadic. We have been a little bit. We've been nomadic since that trip, and more in and out of friends' homes and Airbnbs and retreats in Sedona, et cetera. And we've started to feel the weight of that a bit and really wanting to find a home. And it's a little bit different than living out of our van in nature, which was really what we loved and doing that. And I think we've still, as we've come back and started staying in Airbnbs again, we really miss that. It's been a little too cold to camp in the van, and we've needed a lot of Wi-Fi and other things, but in the last part of the year. But we just had such a glorious time on that trip. And now we have other ideas of things that we may, next trips we may take in the van, and but accessing nature did not disappoint.
No, I mean, as you're talking, I'm just remembering all of these. So the moments that stand out to me from the trip are the simplest moments, like being in the water in Tofino, or the Soak campground, $7 a night campground in Washington State, where we were we camped for 4 nights, and there was no smoke from the wildfires, and that was just so simple and easy and wonderful.
The Olympic Peninsula. We stayed on a farm in Squim, which was our friend and my friend Chad from college, who we had stayed with on Vancouver Island, had a friend Noah who had a farm on the Olympic Peninsula, and we happened to go that way, and we ended up just crashing near these raspberry bushes in the van. It was so wonderful, making fresh breakfast out of berries, and it was just a beautiful, beautiful place.
And so, as we think about that trip, like the power of the intention at the beginning of the year, really was sustained. And because, like, I'm just looking back and thinking about the thousands of coincidences that conspired to create this wonderful experience. Everything from like finding the perfect van to the build. Having like Ben, our friend who builds tiny houses, live on the property right next to us, and literally walk. It's like a 3-minute walk from our condo to this little farm right in the middle of Encinitas, right off the freeway. And he just so happens to build tiny houses and was so excited to help us. To finding campgrounds and RV sites and lodging and meeting people and food and just endless coincidences. And how, looking back, we didn't know any of that. We had no clue that any of that would happen, how it would go. We just trusted something invisible and warm and exciting. And it did not just work out. It turned into probably one of the singular experiences of our lives.
And it has totally informed where we go next. Like you never know when you leap and follow your excitement. We always talk about, from Bentinho's language, the breadcrumb trail of excitement, right? That you don't necessarily know where like 5 breadcrumbs down are going to be, right? But we knew what the first couple breadcrumbs were: build a van and go through the West, right? And sell your place so you can't come back. And so this has now led us to furthering that vision. Now we want to, we want to go find lush, abundant land and be able to grow our own food and build our own home, or find a home where we can then start to build other homes to host others and build community. And so it's grown. We both had very similar visions of like tropical lush landscape, and we'd had those before. So our excitement about Costa Rica, which we'll talk more about now, was planted earlier. We'd been looking at pieces of land before, but that certainly took us further down the road of our next step of excitement.
Yeah, do you want to talk about Costa Rica now, or we'll get to that in a second, because that's kind of more of a wrap up thing. Because we definitely want to involve you in that in whatever way that you are excited about and interested in. But last but not least, on the 3 big things from last year was our interest in Bentinho and that community and his teaching. And I can't say enough about what we have benefited from his teaching, his courage, his integrity, his willingness to be so bold and shine so brightly, and the community that has surrounded him. We feel like we're finally kind of working our way into the warm kind of nucleus of souls and beings that we feel so incredibly resonant with. We were recently, of course, in Sedona, and we were also at a retreat with Bentinho back in October, and a weekend retreat last May. So those are the other 3 times we've been to Sedona this year for those 3 retreats, plus that February trip. But after the last retreat and this retreat, people have come and stayed with us in San Diego, because the bond you form is so strong. And anyway, I don't even know how to talk about kind of what he brings, Bentinho, because his teaching is vast. I mean, it is literally, in my view, the most crucial information being shared on the planet at this time. And I think it really rests, at least for us, on a foundation of, we look around us kind of horizontally in every field of life, whether it's food or healthcare or politics or materialism. And we just came through Christmas, where you're just bombarded with buy this, buy that. I mean, just literally everything seems to be on shaky ground, and every area in life seems to lack consciousness, lack awareness, lack anything real. It's all based on lies and a system that is, to me, at least to my eyes, falling apart as we speak. And in the middle of that is Bentinho Massaro, this young guy. And I've said it before on the podcast, I'll say it again right now, is that I think the young people are going to lead the way into recreating this world and this planet in a way that can actually survive and sustain and thrive. Forget about surviving and sustaining, but thrive. And I think that's because these souls are coming into this sphere right now with a very clear intention. And Bentinho's is as clear as anybody I've ever met. He is absolutely relentless in his willingness to shine for the sake of you and I, basically. And many people can't accept it. Many people can't understand it. And that's okay. It's not, I don't think it is for everybody. Anybody can access it. It's not like it's written in code or anything. But anyway, for us, it has dramatically changed our lives in all these beautiful ways. And we're not here to sell you on Bentinho or anything, though. If this kind of life that we're living and the information that we're sharing and revealing, and if all of this is resonant to you in some way, you might find him interesting. But there's no, we're not trying to sell you on him, and he certainly isn't. I mean, the community is easily the most empowered, healthiest, and clearest on what they're doing that any I've ever been involved with, and it's such a gift. Anyway, so did you want to add something?
Yeah, I do. In terms of what Bentinho's bringing, we've both been a part of a few spiritual communities, and I think what's really different about this, in my opinion, is that Bentinho is very clear that, do you believe that you are just here to live this human life on earth and be part of this sort of, what he calls, what others call a third density society, which is, basically what Stephen laid out about, like, you get a job, what we call also the matrix in a lot of our writings. And, you get a job, you buy a house, get a mortgage, have 2.5 kids, work and put your head down till you retire. And then you are probably fat, sick, and nearly dead. And can't even collect on your retirement. Or like, if you do, you're, barely living, that kind of like narrative that a lot of people are living. And that we're just here to kind of play a human in the world. Or do you think that there's another dimension to your life? And do you think that there's another truth to your life, and that you come with a calling, you come with a mission, you come with being in touch with something else? And many people call that God, God, source, the universe, like there's so many notions of spirituality in our society, but few of them are so direct as to say that, like, you actually are someone else, you are a part of God, you are a part of the divine, the infinite, like, you have infinite potential, and your excitement is the voice of that God, source, universe telling you which direction to go so that you can be of service in a very specific way on the planet. And I think what Stephen's talking about, the young people, what we've seen in the Bentinho community and otherwise, some of our guests as well, a lot of the young people we talk to, is just less congestion of this, like, brainwash variety. I'll call it brainwash of the matrix variety, more connection to an intention toward that calling, that excitement that we're born with, that we come with to this lifetime. And there's less kind of like clogging that has to get out. A lot of the people that we've connected with in the Bentinho community are like 15 to 20 years younger than us. And we keep saying that, like, we're so grateful to be able to play, a bridge role between the matrix society and this new earth that we're all hoping to create, because Stephen and I were so embedded in that matrix, like, not that long ago, so what Bentinho's saying is basically that you don't have to spend 30 years of your life in a cave to access God. You can do that now. And he really calls the question about like, do you want to practice? Do you want to access that? Do you want to feel into what your excitement is and ruthlessly, like, really, like, no holds barred, no excuses, go after that. Mm-hmm. Do you really believe? Do you want to change your beliefs, or do you want to hold on to the limited beliefs that were programmed that serve your sense of security? Serve your fears, help you feel safe in that notion of who you think you are, in society, as this human being in society? Or do you want to go for it? Do you want to believe that you are part of God and the infinite potential, and that you can bring glory, you can bring beauty, and you can bring service to this planet, which desperately needs it? And so we've been just like, what Bentinho says, and Corey, I just listened to the Corey Katuna episode, which certainly will be featured on our best of most listened to episode, and just such a fantastic conversation, and what she says in the beginning quote to that episode is that, one of the things that attracted her to Bentinho was that he didn't care if, he says if it resonates, stay. If it doesn't resonate, that's okay. It's not for you. Like maybe it will be for you in another year, maybe not. But if it resonates, stay. Go with what resonates. He's not invested in whether you come to his retreats or listen to his content online. He just is putting it out there for people who are seeking that and for whom it resonates, and there's like so much free content online. He's given so much stuff away. Yeah. We've shared so much of it with our coaching clients, from, great videos on overcoming lack beliefs or really vibrant meditations, and everyone we've worked with has already gotten so much out of this free content that Bentinho has shared. People have never heard of him before. It's resonated with in some way or another, so, and we also give it see how this resonates. And if not, we have other things to share, so that's what, I think we wanted to talk about really briefly, this article that came out about Bentinho right before the last retreat we attended, which refers to him as a cult leader, basically. We'll just get it out there. And the funny thing to us about that article, it's not funny, but the idea of it being a cult is kind of funny to us, because what we think of as, the fundamental tenet of a cult is that it's hard to get out, or there's kind of like a sucking vortex in, or like a, criticism or something that some force that makes you feel like you can't get out. And it's just totally the opposite with this. People are some of the most beautiful people in the world, and we've met people from around the world who are the most vibrant, clear-eyed, free, warm, intelligent people that we've ever met, are attracted from around the world to where Bentinho is teaching because of, we believe, of this great truth that he is putting out there. And there is no pressure to stay. There's no pressure to come. It's just an attraction to the truth.
Yeah, I echo everything you just said. And, you sort of hinted at it, but a real spiritual community is hard to get into and easy to leave. And a cult is easy to get into and hard to leave. And it's, we just attended, we'll talk about this as kind of a wrap up on Bentinho, but we just attended a recent retreat of his. It ended about a week and a half ago. And to my mind, this was the most important event happening in the world at that time. And, he was literally leading you almost step by step into an enlightened or a fully awakened state, if that capacity existed in you at that time, which for many people it didn't, and that's okay. But he was basically plotting the map for how to actually wake up, Like if you believe that this is the system that you look at around you is broken, it's been created by people asleep and driven by ego-centered motives that will just, by virtue of being so asleep, bring harm to the planet and other people. And we see it everywhere. There's just no mistaking that that's the case. And he's leading a step-by-step, here's the map to actually wake up and to become an open vessel for a higher source of information, a source of service that can literally help the planet. And so we're sitting in there, and there was about 150 to 200 people in there, and there are 7 billion people on Earth. So you tell me if that's like easy to get into or hard to get into. It's very hard to shed all of the layers that this culture and society wants to cover us with, wants us to fall asleep to, wants us to be hypnotized by. And here in this room, we're less than 200 people who have been able to see far enough through those layers to know that we need to wake up. We need to wake up. I need to wake up. It's urgent. It's urgent. And there's no pressure to stay. There's just no pressure to stay. And anyway, it's kind of laughable that something could come out in such stark contrast to the truth, though I do think that is inevitable when you shine as brightly as he does, that it will create an inevitable kind of inverse effect at times. A shadow will reveal itself and will need to be played out, and that's what's happening, and it's fine. Everything's fine. Bentinho is fine. The teaching is obviously fine. everybody who's interested in him is fine. There have been sort of things happen kind of third density wise, if you will, that have been unfortunate, but it's in the big picture, it will all work itself out.
Well, and it came as no surprise in some ways that this kind of article would come out right before this very important event, because there are, as Stephen's suggesting, like there are many powerful forces on the planet that want to keep people asleep.
Yeah.
And so that's all I have to say about that, really. So it, when right on the cusp of this, probably, the longest and most direct teaching, I don't know if he'd say most direct, but longest, and I think most direct teaching toward self-realization, toward awakening that Bentinho's ever done. There'd be this sort of like attacking article right before. And it's just, the irony is that, Bentinho's trying to teach us how to awaken from all of these conditioned triggers that we have, all these conditioned ways of believing that we, the things about the human experience, what's right, what's wrong, what triggers us. And he's trying to help us awaken from that to our true nature, our free, true nature, way before, eons before all this conditioning, and this article is just an example of conditioning at play, and the media is just part of that, part of the third density experience, So anyway, we just wanted to get that out there because we had such, as we described from the very beginning of the year toward the end, we had Bentinho. We're indebted to Bentinho for helping to awaken us, to help us charge after our excitement, to have a much more broad and expansive and abundant and infinite view of our own lives, to be able to put this message out to others. He and Anurag together, like, really put a fire under our butt, so to speak, that like no more waiting around. How many people wait around for decades to live their passion, or never do it, or wait till they're retired, or, it's just, the moment is now, and we so appreciate that message.
And the last thing we'll say on this is, if this doesn't interest you, if Bentinho doesn't interest you, or you have your own that's cool. If you have your own spiritual path, we're not here to certainly sell you on that. That's not at all the case. But we have talked about Bentinho enough on this podcast, whether it's through our discussion on the Endless Bliss retreat that we attended in May, or the Corey interview, or the Anurag interview. There's a few others too. We felt it important to at least address it in a small way, because we know a couple of people, not many, but a few people have contacted us about the article and say, "Hey, have you read this?" And of course we had. I guess I skimmed it just because it was like, oh, okay, I see what this is. This is someone with an agenda. At least it appeared that way to me. But anyway, we wanted to address at least what it's like for us, two people who are joyful residents of this community surrounding Bentinho, that we feel no obligation or force at all to continue that. If we left today, people would be sad to see us go, and then I'm sure they would turn right back around and be joyful again. But also to say that if you like the Ownstream podcast and you've benefited from various of our guests, or even just one guest, if one piece of wisdom has come to you and has helped you, just know that this whole endeavor we trace back to this wonderful kind of spiritual, vibrant, beating, pulsing beam of light that we have thrived within. And so it has helped you through us, but that's the source, at least for it within this kind of realm, if you will, of the earth now. That's where it's coming from. That's the inspiration. And Bentinho, it's not about Bentinho. He's the permission slip to us now feeling completely aligned with our sense of God, our higher self. And we don't really need him. We love him. We love what he teaches, and we keep up with it, of course, because it's so fun and joyful. But we don't feel like we need him anymore, and that's the point. And
that's kind of the ultimate point, actually, which he basically says, "You don't need me." Like he basically says, like, you are your own teacher. Like, and the whole retreat we attended in December was about accessing your own true voice, your own true source, and being able to follow that. So that's the whole point.
So that's where we are.
And this is a good pivot point, I think, to
Yeah,
focusing on next year. So, if you listen to the last podcast Stephen and I recorded when we returned from the van trip, you'll know that community emerged as a real theme for us, something that we are deeply seeking and developing right now as we head into 2018. And this is, as we headed out on our van trip, like we just had such a resonant connection with nature and with each other as a family. And what really emerged is wanting to establish somewhere in nature where we could have a community too, because we want that and we want to cultivate that. And so as we head into the new year, that's a big intention of ours. And so something we wanted to share about Ownstream in the new year is that one of our great intentions for 2018 is to engage with the Ownstream community more. So we've had such an amazing year releasing content, and we've received just like really, really awesome feedback from people on a number of the episodes, on the text on the website. We've had such really like catalytic, transformative work with clients, and it's been so great. But we see the potential out there to really make this a more interactive, dynamic community, and that's something that we head into the new year planning to do.
Yeah, so at least in a mechanical way, we've set up a Facebook community, and we'll link to it in the show notes. But you can go on Facebook right now and type in Ownstream Community, and it will appear, and you can request to join, and there's no criteria for joining. We just want it to be private to people who are not members. So if you want to be a member, just request to join and you'll be approved. But this is a place where Theresa and I can talk about our own path, our own journey. It's a great place where we can connect with you directly within that Facebook community, and where we really hope people will share challenges and triumphs and questions and whatever is relevant for you in the moment. We'd love for you to go in there and share about it as it relates to your efforts to leaving the mainstream path and carving your own stream, your unique expression of you in this world, whatever it looks like. There's no real rules. As you've seen in our podcast series, we talk to a wide variety of people who are doing things differently. And so we'd love to hear from you about how you're doing things differently and what that experience has been like. And we want to support you. We want to cheer you on. We want to share in your triumphs and help you through the challenges. So that's what it's for. It's a place where we can share and talk openly about our path, and where we want you to do the same. Because really, I think the intention of this business, the intention of this platform, this Ownstream podcast, is to inspire you to do that. And so what we really want to do is create a way where we can help you more directly, more than, past the obvious coaching relationship that exists. But we want a forum where people can share ideas, where we can all kind of be a part of your journey, and where you can be a part of ours. And
get support. I think that one thing it's been proven in research, and, this is like the foundation of Weight Watchers, for example, that like community helps hold you accountable to change, and I think we've seen this in our own lives, our own experiences. I will say myself, like trying to quit jobs before and then going back to the exact same path, and why we wanted to burn the boats on our condo and not be able to come back is, why we want community in large part, and what we've been getting out of the community surrounding Bentinho and that spiritual community is people who are on the same path, because the mainstream path is really loud. It's programmed back to our youth. Usually our families are often, part of that programming, the people around us. And so if the people around you, surrounding you all have the same message, and it's like, you better do this thing that's going to keep you safe, and you better get a job, and you better, then it's harder. It's much harder to hear the voice of truth, to allow, to cultivate that voice so that you can sustain change and really break free. And so we are a big mission of Ownstream, in addition to being a platform to share these voices, is to create a community that can be supportive in that kind of change, that can be supportive in echoing and cheering on and providing resources for exiting the matrix, for creating your own stream. So it's an intention of ours for 2018 to more directly cultivate that.
So yeah, again, in the show notes, we'll link to the Ownstream community in Facebook, but also you can just type in Ownstream community in Facebook, and you'll be led to that. There's also an Ownstream page. Don't get those confused. feel free to like the page as well. But the Ownstream community is really where we want this type of conversation to happen. So we also want, so that's kind of the first point about our intentions for this year. There will be more. I think we may share on that a little later on, but within the business of Ownstream itself and our platform, that's the first intention, is to kind of get more in connection with our listeners and with people who are inspired by the stories that we're featuring in our story as well. We want to connect with you. And then secondly, every month we're going to be holding a monthly webinar on how to find your calling. This will be free, no obligation. I think we'll just probably take an email just so we can keep you posted on what number to use to call in with. But yeah, it's a free monthly series on finding your calling. We'll take questions. We've had a lot of client work recently about finding your calling. It's been extraordinary to see people kind of just lighten up. You can just, you'll, through the course of a month or so, their whole lives will radically redirect themselves, all in kind of alignment to their truth or their theme or their calling. And it's so fun. It's easily the most rewarding thing we're doing right now, other than probably raising our daughter, who's turning over in her crib right now. Just a little Sophia Cam update there. So we're going to do these every month. It's a way for us to extend our service and support you in finding your calling. We will take your questions. There'll be a way for us to do that, I think, live on each webinar. We may even do it in advance. So, and the best way to be in the loop for that right now is to join the Ownstream community or like our Facebook page, and certainly hop on our email list too, because that's where we'll be making all of this known when the specifics are clear. Yeah, excited about that. Excited to engage with you guys. So the third thing that we wanted to just flag about this theme of building more community through Ownstream is that we'll be releasing more content, starting with an ebook with a set of tips for exiting the matrix, what you can do now, basically, to exit the matrix, things that we've pulled from our own path, things that we pulled from our conversations with folks on the podcast that you can do instantly this week to get more freedom, to have more of your time to yourself and for your calling. So pretty excited about that. We're working on that right now, so that should be coming out early in the year. Yeah, and this again will be just actionable items that you can do right away. One thing that we're definitely going to do is one thing we've done in the last 3 months was we cleaned up all of our social media feeds. This is a great one to do right away. So great. And I literally turned Facebook from friends bitching about Donald Trump, and I have, I'm certainly not a Trump advocate, but I just don't pay attention to that kind of stuff anymore. To many of my friends rejoicing about their lives, sharing beautiful photographs of their adventures. My Twitter feed is people either talking about cryptocurrency or wonderful trips they're taking, beautiful photographs, wonderful videos. All of my feeds are now celebratory and uplifting, as opposed to kind of dark and negative and depressing. And me too. And it's so wonderful. And for those of you who've been following us for a while in Ownstream, this will be obvious to you. But for those who may be listening to this as one of your first episodes, to be clear about that, we believe that it is through positivity, abundance, rejoicing, following your excitement, spreading the message of consciousness and excitement that we do change the world. That's part of our service. We both spent time mucked up in politics and in negativity and in the struggle and in, really the fight in activism circles for myself, where, there was just a lot of negativity, a lot of anger, a lot of push and in that kind of way. Amplifying the very thing you're fighting. Yes. So for us, this is very clearly the road to change, to creating a new earth that is free for everyone, and that's really part of it is for us is to inundate ourselves with those types of messages and not get pulled down into negativity. And so, and there'll be a lot more in there too. That's just quickly came to mind. There'll be a lot in there about food and diet, healthcare, travel, very simple things you can do right now to save yourself time, put more either money or time or just better beliefs in your field, so that you can live more and more in a way that's truly what you're meant to live, an autonomous, unique path that is your own. So that's going to come out soon. There's going to be lots of very clear, quick-hitting tips. Do this, don't do that sort of thing. And so look for that in probably the month of January sometime. Finally, last but not least, speaking of the month of January, January 23rd, we have a one-way ticket for the three of us to Costa Rica. We're going down there with the intent of obviously having fun, and we're going to record some podcasts down there. We want to have a whole month, or at least a series on people thriving in Costa Rica. That'll be fascinating. But we're going down there with the eye towards like, okay, what would it be like to live here? And we're interested in kind of shifting from this gypsy lifestyle into finding a place to actually kind of call home. We definitely feel that call, and our trip to Costa Rica is specifically for exploring that there, because we've been called there a lot. I think exists there a beautiful blend of infrastructure and community, and then of course beauty and nature and the ocean, which we love. It seems to have everything that we're interested in. And there's also other ways that it's aligned too. We'll talk about that later. But, for example, Costa Rica has no army. There's no military presence at all. And that value really rings true to us.
And there's real community forming there in a few different ways that we're interested in, including some of our friends from the community surrounding Bentinho are interested in Costa Rica. We've talked about possibly co-creating some spaces there, some community there, other projects. There are, people that, we know in the food and healing business, food and healing industry that we know, Kim and Theo Hansen, among others. There's other people trying to create enlightened communities down there with, on big pieces of land, something we're interested in terms of spiritual community. There's, really interesting alternative education things going on, of course, sustainability and agriculture. So a lot of the themes that we're interested in, and the communities also are flourishing in Costa Rica, taking place there now.
And of course, the surfing is amazing there, and
yoga too.
The yoga and the idea of waking up, walking outside, pulling a handful of pieces of fruit off a tree, eating it, and calling that breakfast is rings so true in a primal, natural way. We want that.
Yeah, maybe a year ago we saw this property that's the Jungalow that on was it Craigslist? That basically is just like called back to us and called back. And at the time we had, maybe just had Sophia, and we're like, oh, all of our money was sunk into a condo. We're like, oh, we're not nimble enough to buy this right now. But one of the features of this property is that, it kind of had everything that we are excited about in terms of like the structure of the house, which was super colorful and open, and, big plot of land overlooking the ocean. And of course, like many, many, many types of fruit trees. And that's actually been a theme for us this year. In our travels, being able to pick fresh fruit was one of our huge excitements. And then with the recent cleanse we did, and just that keeps coming back as well. So yeah, more to come.
So we leave on January 23rd. If you're going to be down there in say late January, February, we'd love to connect with you. If you know of people we should meet, or certainly interview for the podcast, please let us know. If you know of places we should go that we might not be aware of, please let us know. We're going to start in the Facebook community the day that this podcast episode goes live, a Costa Rica thread. And join the community and tag the people we should meet there. Send us some media, post an article about people we should interview, share with us places we should go. We want you involved in this trip as much as possible. Part of what we have seen over certainly the last year and really in our lives, if I look back on the big, wonderful things that have happened in my life, so much of the direction that has proven to be valuable has not come from me looking at Google, for example, or Craigslist. It's really come from people inspired and excited by what I'm doing or what we're doing, sharing ideas and offering suggestions and helping direct our journey. And so we want to actively recruit that support from you. And hopefully, if you're going to be down there, if you have ideas, you'll share those with us, because we are very open to being directed and guided on this trip. This is kind of the big next thing for us. I think first part of 2018 is us sort of landing from this big adventure that we've been on for the last 4 or 5 months. And Costa Rica, obviously, is the big first step. So please feel free to share any ideas you have for us within that Costa Rica thread in the Facebook community. I will probably pin it to the top of the page, so you should have no problem finding it. All right.
I think that's it.
24 hours ago, Theresa and I were like, okay, we're going to do this as a duet episode, but we don't know what we're going to talk about. Is there anything for us to possibly talk about? And here we are, 50 minutes on the button, so plenty to talk about.
Oh, it's been great.
So thanks for indulging us this week. Next week, we will feature our best of 2017, our first year for the Ownstream podcast. We couldn't be more proud and excited to share all these wonderful clips with you from these brilliant, brightly shining guests that we've been so honored to feature. Any final words?
No, it's been a fantastic year, beyond my wildest dreams, and it all started with some breadcrumbs, which is pretty awesome. Like, I think about where we were when we launched the podcast, and as we listened to that first episode, and we were in our bedroom in the condo where I would spend all of my days from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. locked away, doing remote work on conference calls all day. And, it's just, it's amazing. I guess what I would want to say is, and we've been, this has been a theme with our coaching clients too, is, it's amazing what change you can create just even within a short amount of time if you follow what really calls you, what brings you joy. Like I myself have just had that experience being stuck for years in the same kind of place and not knowing why I'm unhappy and feeling like I just need to like show up and just do it. And like, I just know a lot of people are out there like that. So I guess I would just say that, this year has been a real evidence for me, a real, point of proof, point of excitement for me that like you really can change your life in all the dramatic ways that you might think are dramatic, but like just starts with a step, And so it's super exciting to be here with you guys. We're loving it and looking forward to the next year.
Yeah. The final thing I'll say is that there is great support for you following your excitement. All the fears that probably appear when you think of following your excitement, most of them are completely unreal, and the ones that do kind of appear in real life in front of you, you will be ready for, you will be equipped for, you will be supported. There is so much support for your excitement, so much. I mean, as we've been talking through this podcast, I just can't help but think of the thousands of ways that we have been supported that we could not have possibly predicted or known about ahead of time. So that's the parting thought from me, is that you will be supported in all sorts of magical, mysterious ways if you commit to following your excitement and be willing to really walk that path. There's really nothing more rewarding in life, at least for me, and I think for you too, Theresa. So that's it for this week. Thank you for your time and for being a listener. We really are grateful for you. We hope you'll join us in the Facebook community. If you have other ideas for guests or things that we could talk about, we're wide open. We really want this to be an open channel between the two of us and you, so feel free to share with us. All right, excited to share with you next week our best of 2017. Until then, have a delicious end to your holiday season and a wonderful and happy New Year.
Thanks for listening to the Ownstream podcast. To learn more and connect with us, please visit ownstream.co or follow us on Twitter @Ownstream and Instagram @own_stream.